Here at Psych with Mike, we are committed to delivering the best, clinically sound psychology information that we possibly can to our audience. Brett and I have decades of clinical experience as well as educational experience, and we want to make sure that we're able to deliver that to the audience and that always be free. So after 2 years, to be able to take the show to the next level, we are going to open ourselves up to advertising. But before that can happen, we need everybody who hears this message to follow the link that is on the show notes on the podcast page or is on the show notes in the YouTube. Click on that link and fill out a survey that is literally 10 seconds long, so it won't take you more than 10 seconds. Do it right now. I'll wait. Okay, so see, that was really fast and really easy, and it's going to help us to be able to attract advertisers to the show and be able to take the show to the next level. Thanks for listening, and we hope that you enjoy Psych with Mike.
Well, I'm sure there will be another way to move forward.
Yeah, just my luck. So welcome into the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan. I am here with my friend Brett Newcomb.
How are you today?
I'm doing fine. We were talking about that just as my TikTok has become a thing and I've been asked to actually enter into a sponsorship agreement, which I may or may not do. Just as that's going to happen, the president is going to shut TikTok down. So
your life has kind of gone that way for 50 some odd years now.
That's just my luck. Just when something starts to go good.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'm a victim. Yeah, a lot of people.
It sucks to be you.
Have that mentality though.
Yes, they do.
It's unfortunate too because the truth is that
a lot of people are victims.
Well, but there are a lot of people that you know that actually have an honest-to-goodness victim story, but don't see themselves as victims.
Yeah.
And then there are a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily fall into a category that you and I would say is victimization, who see themselves as victims. So the moral of that story is that it's really about your perception.
Okay.
And you have control over that. So the question is, is there ever any real victimization? I mean, of course, yes. If something happens to you that's beyond your ability to control, that is injurious to you, you are by definition a victim. But there are a lot of people that have that history, that have that story, and they're still resilient enough to not see themselves as a victim. So people have the capacity to a great extent to control whether or not that is their perception.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And words matter. I mean, part of it is the language you hear in your head.
Right. And what we wanted to talk about today, the idea of codependency, which is a huge topic in not only psychology, but really just everyday life.
Well, yeah, it's a word from the vernacular. It's a word from common usage. It's not a clinical word. Codependency is something that we throw out in casual conversation with our friends, or you can buy books on it. You can go to the self-help section of the bookstore and find a whole bunch of books on codependency. But codependency is not a clinical term like obsessive-compulsive disorder or dissociative identity disorder.
So there is not an official diagnosis in the DSM-5 of codependency.
Exactly.
So, but probably a lot of people think there is.
Yeah, they do. And a lot of clinicians think there is. But it's a word that evolved out of addiction treatments.
Right.
And when I first ran into it, I learned that adult children of alcoholics were all codependent. And so then I would talk to adult children of alcoholic parents and whatever their issues were and we were struggling with in their lives and trying to help them get better. And they would say, and I would say, well, it's alcoholism. And they'd say, well, no, it can't be alcoholism. My parents didn't drink. And then the standard response was, well, obviously you're in denial, which is one of the things that we look for with alcoholism. And so they'd be like, I'm not in denial. My parents never drank. And they'd say, but you're an adult child of an alcoholic because these behaviors are behaviors that we've identified as coming out of alcoholic families. So then after a while, enough clinicians heard that conversation and had that conversation, and they began to say, well, no, maybe we got the cart before the horse. Maybe the adult child, the alcoholic, is codependent because alcoholics come from codependent families. And the main ingredient therein has to do with whether or not families develop and teach children to have healthy boundaries,
Right.
like physical space, touch. What are appropriate boundaries, and do you have them? And if you don't have them, can you get them? Because you're going to be codependent. You're going to have these repetitive relationships in your life where the same pattern works itself out.
Right.
There was a point at which we would say that the average woman who divorces a husband that's alcoholic won't divorce him because he's alcoholic. She'll divorce him if he becomes abusive to the children, or she'll divorce him for some other reason, but not ever just because he's alcoholic. Then she'll say, well, I'm never going to marry another alcoholic. And she'll go out and get married again, and 7 times out of 10, she'll marry another alcoholic.
Right.
And then she'll say, well, I never saw that. I never saw that coming, because she didn't learn the pattern.
Yeah.
So you have to teach, these are the patterns of behaviors that attract you, because you know how to wear these shoes. They are comfortable on your feet, even if you're miserable.
And that's so important.
You know this repetitive pattern. And so there are, how many times have you had conversations with people that said, okay, my relationship has ended, my marriage, my dating, whatever, and I'm now in the market. And you say you need to be looking for people that don't attract you.
I say that all the time.
Don't look for the ones that attract you.
I tell people that we all have what's called an attractometer.
Yeah.
And it's just like an altimeter in an airplane.
Yeah.
And if the altimeter is miscalibrated and you use it to fly the airplane, you're going to die.
Yeah.
So don't do that. And your attractometer is the same way. Whatever you are attracted to is not good for you. So you have to find somebody.
We know that specifically.
Right.
So
let's find somebody that checks all the boxes of what you would like in your life, but you may not be attracted to, and that's probably somebody that you should be with.
Yeah, because the attraction that you are responding to, we already know is a pattern that harms you.
And I will tell you what, people are adverse to that. They absolutely insist there must be attraction, and it's so hard to help them, even if they logically agree with the argument you are making. When they
because
get
it's
out,
emotional, it's not logical.
Absolutely. Right. So what I tell people is that you and I both are in this camp. Language matters. So let's look at the language. What does codependency mean? If you look at the prefix co, that means in addition to or also. So it means dependent also. You can't be codependent by yourself.
Right.
You have to be codependent in a relationship.
In the dance.
Exactly. And that's what you have to look for in codependency. So I can be a drug addict all by myself.
Right.
Because I can have a relationship with my drug of choice without you being a part of it.
Right.
But I can't be codependent all by myself. So that can only occur in the context of a relationship, which means that a codependent is always going to be driven to be in some kind of dysfunctional relationship for that dependency to be active.
Absolutely. The underlying premise is I cannot be okay by myself.
Right.
I can only be okay if you tell me I'm okay.
Right.
So I will dance in front of you and try to please you and do the things that I know please you so that you will give me my attaboy. You will say to me, you're okay. And what happens with the codependent is they always get in a relationship with somebody that cannot ever give them a pure, straight, clean attaboy. They'll say, well, you're okay, but... And then there's a but. But the house didn't get clean. You're okay, but you don't make enough money. You're okay, but you don't speak French. It doesn't matter what the hell it is. But whatever it is, so then you strive to do that. They set this new goal.
Well, it could be you're okay, but it's cloudy outside. I mean,
it's always something wrong with you. Something
but I'm just saying,
work harder and try harder.
But what I'm saying is that for the codependency to work, the partner has to always have the but.
Yeah.
They have to always put it out there.
Yeah.
And so the partner, their dysfunction is that there always has to be a modifier for not only your okayness, but for their okayness.
Yeah.
And so that's what you have to look for in the relationship, right? So here's the thing. If you're codependent, what you're going to try and do is fix them. And that
you're going to try to please them and satisfy them.
Well, but you're going to tell yourself you're going to try and fix them.
Yeah.
Because their need to have that modifier, you're okay, but I can fix that. I can be so good that I can make you say you're okay and stop.
Well, but the trick there, it's like, all right, the but you weigh too much. Mm-hmm. So I can control that. I can lose weight. And then when I lose weight and I come in and say, hey, I've lost 25 pounds, then they say, well, that's really great. But, and then they change the ballgame. Right. And now we have to talk about the fact that this car is a piece of junk that you drive. And I can't be seen with you in this piece of junk. So then you're like, oh, okay, now I need to get a better looking car. So you work your butt off and you get a better looking car and you show up, you say, hey, I've lost weight and I've got a good looking car. And they say, that's really great.
Right.
But, and then they have something new. Here's another ball to chase.
We're saying the same thing. We're just saying it in different ways, which we always do.
But yeah.
The goal is to take the focus off of the but that the partner is investing in and recognize that you are okay, period.
All right, so we are saying the same thing.
Right.
The goal is to internalize my sense of okayness, not get it externally. Because I have handed it to you. You now have the power to make me okay.
Right.
I have to learn how to make myself okay and be at peace with who I am.
So whether you're trying to fix that other person or you're dependent on their affirmation.
That other person will leave you in a heartbeat when you stop being codependent. Because they're going to go find another codependent.
And that's what I tell people all the time, right?
Alone. So then the trick is being alone. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely. We have to learn what that is. And then the question becomes, can I find somebody that I don't give my okayness to? Mm-hmm. I don't hand this to them and then start dancing through whatever hoops they put up on the wall because I feel okay with myself.
So let's modify this a little bit, because from my perspective, and I know that you agree with this, from Heinz Kohut's self-psychology, there's a concept called mirroring where you get reflected positively for things you do well. That is a basic human need. We're not saying that you shouldn't ever get affirmation. We're saying that you should get affirmation in a healthy way, that some people use affirmation as a way to keep you controlled.
Yeah.
That's not positive. So it's not that we're telling people don't ever seek affirmation. What we're saying is you have to find ways of seeking affirmation in a way that isn't contingent on control of your behavior.
Right.
Yeah.
We're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so that's hard for people to do, because we are conditioned that if you allow yourself to believe in you, that is conceited, that is a sign of arrogance.
Yes, we're conditioned that way. We also, there are certain things that we're not taught. We're taught not to know or do. We're taught not to know what we feel. We're taught that we didn't see what we saw. As the President of the United States was recently quoted as saying, you need to not believe what you see and what you hear. You need to believe what I tell you.
Right.
And in codependent families, that's the message that you're given. I, as the parent or the authority figure, have control over rightness, and I will tell you what to believe, what to feel. And so I don't want you to ask what you feel. I want you to take the interpretation of reality that I give you. Grow up in an alcoholic family, and people get into a fight. Literally, parents get into a fist fight, and dad knocks mom out, and you're in the room afraid to come out. You hear all this noise, but you know it's not safe to come out. So you hide in the room and you wonder, did he kill her? And the next morning you get up and mom is cooking breakfast, and nobody says anything. And dad comes in and he does his things and leaves for work, and nobody says anything, and you're looking around like, did that really happen? Did I hear that?
Right.
Was that real? And they all act like nothing happened.
Right.
So then you learn to act like nothing happened.
Right.
And not feel these things.
Yeah.
You shut down all those anxieties.
And so you are taught to be reactive rather than proactive.
Yeah.
So you amend what you think happened.
You don't come in and say, who broke the coffee table?
Exactly.
Yeah. Who busted the TV?
That's right.
You come in and say,
right.
Oh, do I need to clean this up?
Right. And it's really hard for people in general, but specifically who grow up in those kinds of dysfunctional families to understand the difference between reactivity and proactivity.
Yes.
And so it's exactly right. But from what I tell people is, in reactivity, you amend what you think based on what the group is saying happened. Right? So if mom's cooking breakfast and dad comes in and just acts normal, then
reads the paper, has coffee,
right
at the table.
You stop believing that there was a drag-out fight that made you fear for your mother's life.
Right.
You don't say, Mom, are you okay? Because Dad
last night
tried to kill you.
I heard,
Right. You're reactive, you're not proactive. And all of it comes down to a basic inability to understand and respect boundaries.
Right. Absolutely. Or to believe that you have any independent existence for boundaries. You're all an extension of whatever the group think is or the group vision is.
And so what I think both of us have always tried to do in therapy in these kinds of situations is to promote individuals being able to identify and then enforce what they feel like their boundaries are.
Well, I'll give you a common example. You get someone that was sexually abused as a child, and they come from a codependent, dysfunctional family. Usually there's some addictions involved in the family as well. And so then they've struggled to become strong and independent. And then they come in and they say, it's Thanksgiving. And my mother has invited me for Thanksgiving dinner, and I don't want to go because Uncle Joe will be there.
Can I get you to pause for just a second?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to go to our break, and then we're going to be right back. Here at Psych with Mike, we are committed to delivering to you the best psychology information that we possibly can. And we want to make sure that that's always free. So we need everybody to go to the link that is in the show notes on the podcast page or in the show notes on the YouTube page and fill out a really quick, less than 10-second survey. That's going to help us to be able to attract advertisers to the show. That's going to let us take the show to the next level while still delivering the show in a free format. So please help us out. Share that information with everybody in your family, everybody that you know. The more responses that we get, the faster that we can get monetized, the faster that we can attract high quality advertisers. We are committed to screening every advertiser that comes onto the show. So we're not going to be selling you things that we don't agree with or that we don't think are appropriate for the content of the show, but we do want to be able to upgrade the technical quality and the overall look of the show. So help us out. Go right now, click that link, fill out the survey, tell everybody you know to go and fill out the survey, and we really appreciate it. Thanks, and if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike. Okay, we're back, and I just wanted to say, you've told this story before.
Yeah.
This story makes me cry.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think it's because, obviously, it triggers something in me that has to do with my own family of origin and my own history around Thanksgiving and things like that. But you tell me this story, and it gets me every time. Yeah, but go ahead.
Well, anyway, so you say, I don't want to go because Uncle Joe's going to be there. But if I don't go, then everyone, because I've told my parents, hey, Uncle Joe touched me in this way. And they said, that didn't happen. You made that up. Uncle Joe's a great guy. If you say this, you'll destroy the family. You'll have Uncle Joe put in prison. You're a bad person. Don't you dare ever say that. And so then the rest of the family is in denial about Uncle Joe, although they all know about Uncle Joe. They're just not willing to face the cost of confronting Uncle Joe. And so then you become the identified bad person in the family. You're trying to destroy the family. You want to cripple the whole family. Grandma's 84 years old, and this may be her last Thanksgiving. And if you don't come to this, then Grandma won't understand why you're not there. And Uncle Joe will be there, but that didn't really happen. You made that up. You misunderstood. He was just your friendly uncle. His tongue just fell in your mouth. It didn't really. He didn't mean anything by that. And so then you're torn. Do I not go to Thanksgiving and maybe not see Grandma for the last time? Or do I go and then do I lose the strength that I've gained and the independence that I've gained because I go back in the middle of the game and all the players are playing?
Yeah.
So how do I do that? I said, well, if you go, you have to figure out how you're going to behave. Are you going to say, Uncle Joe, you smell bad, and have everybody have a fit because you said Uncle Joe smells bad? Are you going to go and for the weekend give yourself permission to play, to fit in, and smile at Uncle Joe and say, hi, how are you? And see Grandma and see everybody else, and then come home and take a shower and say, God, that was nasty.
And what I tell people is that you have to be proactive. How could you be proactive in whatever decision you make? Because you could be proactive anyway, but you have to be proactive, not reactive. So if you're going to go and play the game, then you have to be cognizant. I'm playing the game, and I'm outsmarting everybody.
Give yourself permission to
exactly
do it.
Right,
and don't come home contaminated.
And maybe even do it in a way that is a little malicious, like you're going to play the game and you're going to play better than them. And I mean, however you do it,
I
that
would
makes
not
you
encourage them to play that way. I would encourage them self-ownership. If you go, you go for your reasons, and you decide your behavioral strategy.
It's
but don't
hard
get into
not
the
to want to be a little bit vindictive.
It is absolutely hard not to.
Yeah.
But it's also hard to go and be around this uncle that contaminated you and have everybody else pretend they don't know what happened.
But exactly, because what it comes down to is that there's more value in being the uncle than there was in being this indefensible child.
No, it comes down to the codependency pattern of the family and the addiction pattern of the family.
But for the individual, the message is
Uncle
Joe matters more than you.
Yeah. No, what matters is the script, the illusion of the perfect family. I grew up in an alcoholic family.
I understand that's the
denial
truth.
And silence. You don't say. Nobody knows. You don't tell anybody anywhere what happens in our house. We put up the image of the perfect Newcomb family here that people know throughout town. They know your dad's this, and they know your mom's that. They know who you are. That image is more important than any feeling you have or any experience that you had.
But that message then to you is that the image has more value than you do.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm saying.
The image is true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're a lying little snit.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm saying is that somehow that individual has to find their own empowerment to be able to speak truth to power, whatever that is.
One of the most honest things my father ever said to me was, boy, we're going to miss you at the next family reunion. I never understood the power of that message, but then eventually when I left the family, I didn't go back to the family reunions, and they may or may not have missed me, but I didn't miss them.
Exactly.
So, you have to become independent of the message and the script, which means you have to develop self-ownership, okayness, and a different script.
Because you are conditioned to exist in a space of low self-esteem where you don't have the right to interpret reality for yourself. You can only react.
You don't feel what
to
you
what
feel.
The message
you don't
is.
see what you see. You didn't hear what you heard. That's not real.
And
reality is we're all having breakfast in the morning, and there's nice mom fixing breakfast, and there's nice dad having coffee, and there you are, just needing to fit in.
Yeah.
Don't rock the boat.
And so what I would talk about with the client is, okay, let's say you went to Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And you wore a placard that said...
first talking about, can you give yourself permission not to go?
Sure.
And what if Grandma dies?
Right.
What? How are you going to handle it?
What if you went wearing a breadboard that said, Uncle Joe touched me?
Yeah.
What would happen?
Right.
Would you be arrested? No. Would you? So you wouldn't be incarcerated because you wore this sign.
Oh, but you might be told to leave. There might be people get fish
absolutely.
Fights. How dare you say that? I mean, this could be
and they could call you names.
Disaster.
And they could tell you you're not welcome. And could you live with that?
Yeah. Well,
that's the exercise is what can you live with? What can you own as your narrative and live with? And if the end result is the only thing that you can live with is not going, then that may be the best of all evils. But you have to own the narrative. And if you don't own the narrative, then you're just reacting to the message.
In a less severe example, somebody dealing with codependent scripts, the ability to say, I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like it when you say that in front of me. I don't like it when you say that to me. can you develop the strength to do that, to go into a situation and say to someone, I don't like it when you make fat jokes because I have weight concerns, or I think it's rude, or whatever.
I had $1 for every time I've had the conversation that somebody meets a partner and somebody in the family is just a full-blown racist.
Yeah.
And the whole family is against it,
right?
But they accommodate it.
Well, they say they're against it, but they accommodate it. But who knows where they really are?
I know, that's what I say.
But you can say,
can you walk in and say, "Hey, I don't
like it when you say that." Yeah, that's a racist comment. It makes
me uncomfortable.
And then you have to understand that if you do that, everyone in the group is going to turn and say, you're out of line. How dare you embarrass Uncle Joe? He's 72 years old. He's always been a racist, and he's not going to change. And so why are you making everybody uncomfortable? And you have to be at peace with that. You have to be accepting of the fact that that is probably going to happen. It's a guarantee.
Right.
But you can still give yourself permission to say, Uncle Joe, that's racist. You shouldn't say things like that. It offends me when you say something like that. And then they'll say, well, you need to just leave the room. Well, then fine, leave the room.
You, in group class, presented back in graduate school, presented this information on Kaufman and the drama triangle.
Yeah.
And that, there's a triangle. There are three sides to the triangle. It's in
a book called Scream Louder.
Scream Louder,
by Marsha Utane. Chapter 7 of that book.
Yeah.
It's a great, and
it's all over the internet, so people can find it. I mean, it's extremely popular. But so there's a persecutor, a rescuer, and a victim.
Right.
And it defines all of the dynamics of dysfunctional language and dysfunctional relationships that there can ever be.
Yeah.
But the only way out of that triangle is through the role of the persecutor. You have to be able to be seen as the bad guy.
You have to know everybody else is going to swear and be damned that you are the persecutor.
That's right.
You have to know that you're not, and be okay with the fact that they think you are.
Exactly.
Because you have to give yourself permission not to play. The only way to get out of the drama triangle is to learn not to play.
Right.
And say, no, I don't do that anymore.
Well, and what I tell people is that you're changing the rules of engagement for the family. Right. And that's perceived as threatening to everybody else because it throws them out of their homeostasis.
Yeah, it rips the mask off that they've all learned to wear.
And so you have to be okay with that, to be able to say, I'm willing to wear that yoke because I can't tolerate this any longer.
Everybody and his brother will say you're the bad person. So you have to make your peace with that knowledge. I know this is going to be the response. And so I'm still going to go and see my grandma before she dies. I may not stay for dinner. I may come in and say who farted, and then everybody's going to look at me and be outraged, like, oh my God, we don't talk like that in this family. How can you say that? And then I'll say, everybody have a nice Thanksgiving, I got to go.
And the reason that that's hard is because you're so conditioned to be reactive that when they all say, oh, you're the bad guy, naturally you want to snap into line and say, oh, well, I must be the bad guy. And I you have to be able to resist that.
I'm so sorry. Yeah.
And say, no, you know what? I'm not the bad guy. I'm okay with all of you saying that because I'm content knowing that that's not true. And I think it takes a lot of work for people to be able to get there.
It takes an incredible amount of work. It's very painful and it's very difficult. And especially if we're talking about sexual trauma, childhood sexual trauma, a lot of times they've suppressed those memories so severely they don't know. I mean, a lot of times it breaks out when they have a child of their own that's at that age.
Right.
And so I have a 7-year-old, and we're going to the family reunion for Thanksgiving, and suddenly I start having these flashbacks about Uncle Joe. And everybody I check with, I call my sister, I call my aunt, I call my mother, and they're all saying, you're really crazy. You need to get help. You are going to destroy this family. Don't you say anything. Which reinforces all those messages. It's just really sad.
What I tell people is that codependent means dependent also. So a person who's codependent is dependent just like anybody else is. But what they are dependent on is love or the illusion of love. So the way that a codependent elicits that affirmation response or feels like that they are valued is through their responsiveness of codependency. And so what that person has to do is recognize that's an illusion. That's not real. And the only way to get real love, to get real affirmation, is to stop being reactive, to own their narrative, and then they can build a truth-based affirmation and love relationship, but it can never happen in the codependent relationship.
Yeah, you have to own your own okayness.
Yeah.
You have to take it back and internalize it. Because if you give your ability to feel okay to someone else, then they will always manipulate you with it. It's just like they continue to give you a cookie and a cookie and a cookie, but the rules keep changing. Mm-hmm. So what got you a cookie today won't get you a cookie tomorrow. And they have the authority to make you feel okay.
Yeah.
You don't have it.
And you have to take that
You have
back.
to get it. You absolutely have to get it.
So hopefully that was good for everybody. Again, as we are saying, whenever we have these kinds of clinical discussions, none of this is meant to be a substitute for therapy. We still believe that the best way for people to overcome these problems is to find a reputable and licensed therapist and work with them and try and resolve those issues. As always, the music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. Please go to Apple Podcasts and rate us and leave us a comment. That is super helpful for the show. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.